With Joel Embiid winning this year's MVP award, I wanted to take a look at how he stacks up with the rest of the MVPs since the year 2000. Many Twitter users were quick to jump on Embiid after his playoff performance and call his MVP the worst of all time. Let's see how much truth is really behind that. Now, this is all subjective, but some things I'll be looking for are the obvious points per game, assist, rebound numbers, and defensive stats, but also win share to see how effective they were helping their team succeed. Now, if we're just looking at these stats by face value, obviously you can go with any guy with a lot of points per game, rebounds, assists, but there's so much that goes into these. We have to look at the competition that year, how they helped their team succeed, how effective they really were. Were they a shot chucker, like we've seen with some MVPs, or were they just really effective but their numbers were low? And there's a lot of things that don't show up on the stat sheet. Now, there's no right answer for any of these guys, but I compiled a few lists together and made some adjustments, and these are my official rankings for the past 23 MVPs since the year 2000. Number 23, Steve Nash from 2006. This MVP in retrospect is one of the least deserving in history and definitely the least in the past 25 years. Nash won his first MVP because of his revolutionary style of play and change in winning in Phoenix, but to win another one because of that when Kobe averaged over 35 points a game is definitely debatable. I'll throw up both of their stats on the screen right now, but I definitely think that Kobe should have won this award this year, especially compared to Steve Nash. I understand the first MVP, but to go back-to-back when I'm not really sure if he deserved the second one or even the first one, we'll get into that later, but I still don't think that he should have won this MVP, and that's why it's the lowest on our list today. Number 22 is Steve Nash from 2005. His first MVP doesn't fall far from his second, but like I mentioned before, his revolutionary play style and bringing the Suns back to a contender is worth the MVP this year. Many argue that Shaq should have won the MVP, and I completely agree. Again, I'll throw up some stats from this year too, but I understand where they're coming from, especially if you're looking kind of off the stat sheet overall. I see why they gave it to Nash, but I personally don't agree with this, and that's why I have Nash having his first MVP basically next to his second MVP. I think both of these are probably the worst out of the past 23 years that we'll look at today. 21, we have Derrick Rose from 2011. Derrick Rose will go down in the history books as probably one of the only players not considered a legend or a top 25 to win an MVP. In the moment, it was great to see the young star win, but the NBA seemed to have dealt with voter fatigue when this one probably should have gone to LeBron James. But overall, it's still a moment in history, but compared to the rest of these MVPs, Derrick Rose's MVP is a lot lower. In our 20th spot, we have Allen Iverson from 2001. AI carried this team to the finals this year, putting up 31 points per game in the regular season, leading to his MVP. The issue with this one is that he was basically the only good player, and in turn, he was the only one who could really make a shot, leading to some inflated stats if you look at them overall. Pair that with some bad efficiency and not amazing defense, and he lands at 20 on our list. At 19, we have Kobe Bryant from 2008. Kobe gets his lone MVP this year, but this one is low on this list just because this one is also up for debate too. Many people think that Chris Paul should have won this award, even though Kobe led the league in points, but he also led it in shots too. And if you look at it, Chris Paul was a more efficient player from that year, but besides that, if you look back at it, it's great that he got the award, but it seemed like he deserved it more in other seasons and arguably shouldn't have got it in this season. Like we talked about before, I feel like he should have got it in 2006, and you could definitely argue that Chris Paul should have got this award. At 18, we have Tim Duncan from 2003. Duncan's second MVP in a row saw him take a dip in points per game and win share, though he still led the league in win share. This margin was a lot closer than his first MVP win share margin, which hurts him a little bit compared to the rest of the field, but this was still a great year from Duncan overall, not as great as the rest of the MVPs on this list, or as great as his first MVP. At 17, we have LeBron James from 2012. LeBron makes his first appearance on this list with his first MVP that he got with the Heat. This came during a lockdown season that was shortened, which hinders the award a little bit compared to the rest. He still had a fantastic season and no doubt should have taken home the award, but even the COVID lockdown year had more games played in total, and this is the first of the 4 MVPs that he won that we'll see on this list. At 16, we have Russell Westbrook from 2017. Westbrook being this low might surprise some people as he averaged a 32-point triple-double. The reason why he's so low compared to the rest is because of his efficiency and the fact that the Thunder were a 6 seed. This is still a historic season, but relative to others on this list, I feel like it just has to be that low. I mean, Westbrook pretty much was the whole entire offense for this team this season, but like I said, the efficiency and the 6 seed kind of brings him down a little bit. At 15, we have Steph Curry from 2015. Curry's first MVP lands at the 15 spot, averaging 24 on 50, 40, 90 splits. This season isn't as impressive as his second MVP season, but this is the start of the Steph Curry who would go on to dominate the latter half of the 2010s. At 14, we have Dirk Nowitzki from 2007. Dirk's MVP season is comparable to Curry's MVP, which we just saw, averaging 25, 9, and 3 on 50, 40, 90, which I think is a little more impressive coming from a big man. That's why I have him a little above Curry. His win share was also a tad bit higher than Curry, so I gave him the nod, but pretty comparable seasons if you're looking at the numbers. At 13, we have Giannis Antetokounmpo from 2019. Giannis' first MVP solidified himself as the guy who was being built up the years prior in Milwaukee. If you didn't know his name before, you certainly would now. Giannis dropped 28, 12.5, and 6, leading the Bucks to 60 wins and was the DPOY runner-up. Second place is still very good in that race, but if he had won the award like he did in his second MVP campaign, this one would be higher. At 12, we have Joel Embiid from 2023. This is probably the point of the video you were waiting for. Joel Embiid finds his way right above Giannis as he averaged 33, 10, and 4 with the second highest efficiency in the league. This was a close race all season, but Embiid ended up taking the award away from Jokic, stopping his three-peat. The only thing stopping Embiid from being higher on this list is that he wasn't voted to a defensive team and didn't play as many games as the rest of the MVPs on this list that are above him, but still a historic season, especially from a big man. Averaging 33 points has not been done since Kareem, which is a reason why I have him this high on the list. I think he's the greatest scorer that is in the game right now. He can hit it at any level. And I know that there's a lot of people that were talking about his postseason, but this is a regular season award, and that's why I have him high. At 11, we have Nikola Jokic from 2021. Jokic's first MVP solidified the Nuggets as a contender in the West as they were a 3 seed this season, and this put Jokic as one of the best players in the world. We saw how well he could pass as a big man as he had over 8 assists per game with another 26 points and 11 rebounds, so almost averaging a triple-double. But overall, this is where we saw how good Jokic was as he became one of the best players in the world with his first MVP. At number 10, we have Nikola Jokic from 2022. His second MVP in a row, I feel like, is slightly better than his first, as he brought his points per game up and his rebounds per game up. The dip in the assist doesn't mean much to me, as he was basically the whole offense this season with a lot of key players being hurt. He improved his numbers with fewer minutes on the court, which also is another nod for me over his last MVP. The reason I have this a little bit lower than the rest on this list is because of the defense, and they did end up being a 6 seed this season. And if you're going to look at the other MVP, which I talked about earlier in Russell Westbrook, the reason why I have Jokic here, even though he was a 6 seed, is that he had a way more efficient season and was putting up a lot better with what he had on the court, especially points per game, rebounds per game, and the assist. With what he had, I still feel like this is a lot better than Westbrook's season, even though they both ended as a 6 seed. At 9, I have Giannis Antetokounmpo from 2020. This MVP is more impressive to me than his first because of the fact that he did everything he did the year before, increased his points per game and rebounds per game, and won the Defensive Player of the Year award. The Bucks also had the best record in the NBA this season to go on top of everything I just said, which makes this season incredible. The only thing keeping this lower than the rest is the fact that he only played 63 games due to the COVID lockdown. Obviously, that's not his fault, but if he played 75 or 80 games, this would be probably top 5 for me, but due to the circumstances, I have to keep it a little lower than the rest. At number 8, we have Tim Duncan from 2002. Duncan dominated this season on and off the stat sheet, 25.5 points per game, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, 2.5 blocks, and all defensive first team. He also played 40 minutes per game and played every single game. That's something that I don't know if we will ever see again in NBA history. And honestly, if I had to place a bet, I don't think we ever will see it again. He also led the league in win shares by a massive gap. This is just his counting stats. Some would argue he provides more off the stat sheet than he does on it too. There is so much that goes into his game, especially if you're playing 40 minutes per game. Playing 40 minutes per game and every single game in a season completely deserves the 8th spot for me overall. At number 7, we have Kevin Durant from 2014. KD's MVP season is one that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough in history. 32, 7, 5.5 with the third highest win shares of these MVPs on this list is absolutely insane. Durant showed that he is the guy in the NBA. He was elite scorer that should not be messed with. He also had the highest true shooting percentage of any player, averaging 32 points per game or more in history at the time of his MVP, which is also absolutely insane. Like I said before, I feel like this one doesn't get talked about enough, and that's why I put it this high, because 32, 7, 5.5 with a high true shooting percentage is something that we don't really see anymore in the NBA, and especially with a lot of these MVPs on the list, we see a lot of guys scoring a lot of points, but not efficiently. That's why I feel like Kevin Durant's MVP deserves a little more praise than it gets. At number 6, we have LeBron James from 2010. This was the season where we knew that he had enough in Cleveland but left it all out there. LeBron averaged 30, 8.6, and 7 a game while having Mo Williams being his second best player, but he still dragged them to 61 wins on the season. This is one of those seasons where the stats are very impressive, but if you look at who he was playing with, taking this team to 61 wins is the biggest reason why he's this high. At number 5, we have Kevin Garnett from 2004. Garnett's MVP season included 24 points per game, 14 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 blocks, and 1.5 steals per game. The biggest reason why KG is this high is because of his impact on the Timberwolves, leading them to their best season in franchise history at the time. A 20.7 point swing in the Timberwolves net rating is massive, and if we're talking about players being valuable, KG was one of the most valuable since 2000. And at number 4, we have LeBron James from 2009. LeBron's first MVP came at only 24 years old as he led the Cavs to 66 wins and cemented himself as the king. 28, 7, and 7 brought LeBron to the top of the NBA at such a young age that the hype finally seemed like it was paying off. At number 3, we have Shaq from 2000. 29.7 points, 13.6 rebounds, and 3 blocks a game, while also leading the NBA in scoring, efficiency, offense, and defensive win shares, and 67 wins. This was the year that Shaq completely dominated the league, and there was no way to stop him on any end of the floor. When people talk about Shaq being the most dominant, watch any game from this season, and you will see what they are talking about. At second, we have LeBron James from 2013. LeBron James reached his peak this season, proving that he was the best player in the NBA offensively and at this time defensively. He averaged 27, 8, and 7, and arguably should have won the Defensive Player of the Year while leading this team to 66 wins overall. If we're talking about peak LeBron James, this is what we are looking at, and he was absolutely unstoppable. Best player in the league, in the world, and offensively and defensively. And at number 1, we have Steph Curry from 2016. Steph Curry leads the greatest regular season team of all time to a 73-9 record while having memorable moments all season and changing the game completely behind the arc, making the game what it is today as a 3-point league. Curry had the greatest offensive season of all time, breaking the 3-point record, shattering the 3-point record, and had the best true shooting percentage of all players who shot over 1,000 shots in a season. And he was also in the 50, 45, and 90 club. An absolutely massive season, and arguably one of the greatest MVPs of all time, and the best that we've seen since the year 2000. So that officially concludes the video, and I know there's a lot of you guys who probably already commented on this video by the time it was over. Some of your favorite players you might have felt like got snubbed and put a lower than they should have. So let me know down below, who do you guys think should have been higher? Who do you think should have been lower? Where do you think your favorite MVP from this past 23 years should have been? I know there's going to be a lot of comments, so I want to hear them all from you guys, and that's the reason why we make these lists, because everyone has a different opinion, and there's no way to have a right opinion just because the stats by by themselves don't tell the full story. With some guys like we mentioned, Tim Duncan, the stats don't tell the full stories about him, and even Russell Westbrook, the stats don't tell the full story. So, thank you guys again for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.